Netanyahu has confirmed that Israel did indeed attack nuclear site during their most recent attack on Iran in October. That is something we knew for a bit. I think there was a Axios report about it. I think about 5 days ago, basically saying that they have basically confirmation from some of the U.S. and Israel insiders that Israel did indeed attack nuclear site, and I think there was a general idea that Israel did something like that for a bit now, but now we have an official confirmation from Netanyahu. Basically, there is a difference between, sort of something being an open secret and straight up Netanyahu coming out and saying, yes, we did something that United States say they do not want us to do, and we did it. This comes out, I think, just not long after Biden has levied or said he'll impose new sanctions on Israeli settlements or Israeli settlement individuals, and also a specific organization. So we'll talk about the sanctions, and we'll also talk about this attack. Joining me today, and if we have time, we might also talk about one different sanction. Basically, Israel proposes that United States could lift sanctions on Syrian and Russian companies on Lebanon in order to basically help de-arm Hezbollah, but that's only if we have time. So yeah, joining me today is Alex and Anders. Thank you guys for joining me today. Welcome to the reality show. And Alex, let me start with you. What do you think about this Biden's that's actually something we've mentioned that Biden might try because he knows Donald Trump is coming as a new president, so he might try to put in some things in motion that might be harder to get rid of, or basically will push Israel in a certain direction to basically do something in the meantime. But Alex, what do you think?
You're referring to the sanctions on the Israeli individuals?
Well, let's talk about the specific, and I don't have my notes open, but there is the specific organization that
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah. This has been going back all the way to February when Biden announced his executive order. The executive order was essentially to sanction any individual who is threatening the peace and security in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank. Up until now, they have sanctioned 23 organizations or individuals. And yesterday was, I would say, the kind of the biggest one yet. And they decided to sanction. And by the way, it's very interesting that they have not sanctioned any Arab terrorists or sanctioned even the PA
uh,
who fund
it's
terrorism.
I think it's a new report that came out, I think, just like in half an hour ago. Apparently, it looks like Biden administration announced sanctions on Hamas individuals too. Uh,
Oh, that's good. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's nice. All right, I'm glad. I'm glad. So yeah, so the latest one, I think that was because they said 23, organizations or individuals that are threatening the peace and security of Judea and Samaria, and you've only sanctioned Jews. Yeah, so and that is obviously on the pretext of a couple of lies. The first is, of course, this settler violence lie, whereby the Biden administration wants you to believe that there is an epidemic of violence occurring in Judea and Samaria, when there's not. Okay, there are it's when you have 500,000 people living in an area, you're going to have people who are engaging in anarchism of certain, or rioting. That could be throwing rocks. That could be having vicious fights. That could be. but there is no epidemic of violence, whereas there's been a 350% increase in Arab terrorism in Judea and Samaria, mainly shooting attacks. It's actually the highest it's been since the Second Intifada. Yeah, so the latest round of sanctions went after a building company for the crime of building in Judea and Samaria, and specifically for giving out kind of financial assistance to anybody who wants to, start their own community. Um, so it's basically to be expected. We were to understand that the Biden administration, they would, the Obama administration, the Biden administration, they want to put the Israeli rights in a position whereby they're taken down a peg or two. And they basically, as far as I can see it, they really want to criminalize anybody who doesn't believe in the Biden theory or the Kerry theory or the Bill Clinton theory of a two-state solution. We have an enormously I would say intelligent population here in Israel who's managed to figure out how to desalinate water, and there's been one solution on the table for the last 30 years, and it's not a solution that's working. Are you really trying to tell me that that is the only solution that there is? That there's not other solutions that might be better for Palestinians as well? This is, but it's criminalizing essentially anybody who pursues another path forwards, and pursuing kind of sanctioning companies that are involved in simple construction is it's very, very pernicious. And there is actually a case that is going to the Supreme Court in the United States. I think it is Texans for Israel, and because they're saying that their civil rights are being violated because they cannot support organizations in Israel that they want to, right? They want to express their support by donating or by having, going there and having tours. So, yeah, so what can I say? I believe the strategy is to leave as much chaos as humanly possible so that Trump can't possibly think in a new and different direction.
That is, as you mentioned, the Supreme Court, or basically something that might go to the Supreme Court. Texans for Israel, the U.S. Department of the Treasury, because I believe any sanctions that are levied do go through the Department of Treasury. So this will be definitely interesting. Potentially even maybe interesting episode with James Valiant, if we can get him up about basically, yeah, because American government is restricting, because among other things, basically what sanctions do is disallow American citizens from basically giving money to these organizations. So it might be an interesting case. But Anders, what do you think about these actions taken by the Biden administration? Basically, few months with the new president-elect Trump already being the winner of the last election, becoming a new president, and now these sort of actions taken basically just before Trump actually becomes the president.
Yeah, let me set aside the Biden actions just for a moment and just recognize that, the West Bank situation, Judea and Samaria, is obviously a complicated situation. And a lot of it goes back to the fact that individual rights and property rights have been violated consistently since the founding of Israel. And I don't necessarily mean by Israelis, but you have this area, and I think there was kind of absentee property laws that were implemented back in the late 1940s in response to the fact that Arab nations asked Palestinians to leave the area because of the war, and some took them up on it. A lot of them stayed, and that's why we today have still a large contingent of Arab, Palestinian and other Arabs living in Israel, being Israeli citizens, right? But it's important to acknowledge, I think, that this lack of well-defined property rights is a big part in creating this situation, setting aside now religious and ethnic differences. Because the fact is that, on the Palestinian side, and we don't hear anything about that from Biden, there are Palestinian land laws in place so that anybody living in the Palestinian Authority controlled territories, and I guess in the entire West Bank probably, it's punishable by death if you sell land to definitely any Jewish person, but there is a gray zone of other people too. I mean, any non-Palestinian. So for instance, any non-Palestinian Islamic person. So for instance, there have been, I think, cases about where one Palestinian who was a Muslim tried to sell to a Palestinian Christian. That was hotly contested. I don't know where that ended up. But that is one thing, obviously, which is a violation of property rights, right? Because an individual should be able to sell his property to whomever he wants to. I don't know what the status is of renting and leasing out land and property. So for instance, if I'm Palestinian and I see a thrifty Israeli that I would like to lease my land to, you probably are not allowed to do that either. But that part I actually don't know for sure. So that is one thing on the Palestinian side that we don't hear anything about in the discussions about about sanctioning different things on either side. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that to the if Israeli settlers are clearly taking Palestinian private land for their use. I mean, that's a property violation. I don't know to what extent that is happening. We read about how settlers are taking land from Palestinian cattle herders or goat herders or something like that. So their grazing land is disappearing. Now, is that grazing land private property by these sheep shepherds or goat herders? Well, if it is, and I don't know, but if it is, yes, it's a property violation. Now, do the Palestinians have large swaths of public land? Well, it's like a commons that is a free-for-all. I don't know, but that obviously creates problems, just like commons everywhere creates problems anywhere, right? And then you have the whole situation of the land of the absentee laws, people who moved out and may have tried to come back, but they can't claim their lands, and that I think is a big portion of settler land as well. So there are a lot of different, and Alex, you can weigh in on this. You probably know more about the details than I do, but it's a really complicated situation. So to wrap it up and bring it back to Biden, the fact that we're sanctioning certain individuals here, and I don't know the details of the cases to what extent they have de facto violated property rights, in which case, I mean, it's something that should be, if not sanctioned, it should be condemned because it's theft, right? But on the other hand, to not sanction the PA, for instance, for having these land laws in place, that means that you can't sell or possibly lease your land. That's equally repugnant, you know. So it's very, very one-sided whether these sanctions are actually merited or not in individual cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I'll
sorry,
kick
go
it.
ahead.
I'll kick it to you, Alex, in just a second, because you're more knowledgeable about this specific issue. But yeah, this idea about you know, there is, you know, this push for Palestinian state. Palestinians deserve a state, and whenever they talk about it, they never talk about the what state. It's just, you know, they, if they want to make Iranian type theocracy, you know, well, that's what they can do. Again, no push for actual any standards, such as, you know, some basic idea of property rights, or the fact that, you know, once those are established, you can sort of move on from there. But this, you know, and we have someone in the chat saying it should be referred to Judea and Samaria and not West Bank. And you know, there's a conversation there, but it's a hot mess. I mean, the what has you know, you had the Oslo Accords. This sort of situation was created, and it's just a hot mess. Like, you cannot. As Alex mentioned, you have terrorist attacks coming out of there. You have Palestinian Authority actively supporting terrorist attacks, which things such as the Martyr Fund basically paying out welfare for killing Jews, and you have these things happening. And I think that's maybe one good thing coming out of the possible one of the possible actions of the Trump administration is something I've heard saying is actually people are starting to talk about the annexation of all of the West Bank by Israel, and I think that would be a good step towards some sort of fixing, but it wouldn't magically solve it. You still have millions of Palestinians being there, not being that much different from the people in Gaza. When we look at the polling data and everything, in some cases, the current Palestinians are even in the territories controlled by the Palestinian Authority are even more radical than people in Gaza. So, but Alex, you wanted to.
Yeah, so in terms of the absentee law, I don't think that would really affect the West Bank, because the West Bank was under Jordanian control during 1948. So you know, we're talking, you know, Judea and Samaria has only been under Israeli control since 1967. So yeah, so one of the things that I think is also very much because of the way that the media is so united in the way that they report this. There is this idea that there's, you know, Israelis that are going out there and just expropriating land from shepherds, which is, you know, it's absolutely not happening. The Judea and Samaria is separated up into three specific areas with three different legal statuses. You have Area A, which is full Israeli control, and you have Area C, which is Area A, which is full Palestinian control. And then you have Area C, which is full Israeli control. Now, according to Oslo, Area C was supposed to be a no construction zone. All right. Yes, I know. So Area C, and that is something, well, certain areas in terms of, so Area A comprises of about 38% of the land. Okay, so it's actually quite significant. And Area C is the rest of it. And the Israeli settlements, they comprise less than 3% of the land. Okay, so in addition to that, you have the issue of illegal structures. All right. So no Jew is allowed, according to Oslo, and according also to Israeli law, no Jew is allowed to build houses on private land that belongs to Palestinians with or without a deed. Okay, So if it really doesn't matter if somebody has, sold you land or you've stolen the land, if it is on area A or B, the police are coming and they're demolishing the property. Now, in area C, you have a couple of things. So you have many instances of shepherds who put a shack, all right, on somebody's private land, right? Or land that somebody has said is their private land. And they go and they petition the court, and then that particular piece of property is demolished by the IDF. And there's you have I wouldn't say that that land theft or whatever is going on in any meaningful way. However, when it comes to illegal structures, you can see that the IDF is not equally applying the law. Since 2019, there have been 89 illegal structures that have been built along the seam line, right? So that's like strategic, strategic points by the PA in Area C on the seam line, right? Which is kind of almost creating a type of a border. And the Israeli kind of judicial, I suppose the Israeli judicial system and also the IDF, they don't actually have the political will to do anything about this. And they call it the Israel envelope 2023. And all you can see is just all of these massive illegal structures. And actually the EU is funding quite a lot of that. Also on and I'm the idea that you cannot sell your property to somebody because they're Jewish. It's obviously a complete violation of anybody's property rights. But according to Israeli law, Israelis can build in Area C. So it's absolutely a violation on every and that's why it was so important, I think, to actually go ahead and sanction this construction company. And it's absolutely unprecedented, because what it now means is that you as the head of a construction company can no longer enter the US. This is a measure that is generally reserved for terrorists, for drug lords. And I do believe that that they will try to sanction Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and maybe they will. I believe that they want to. I'm not sure that they understand currently how exactly that's going to fit in. From a legal standpoint, I'm sure that before they do that, they'll want to make sure that that it's not going to be violating United States law. And that will be, I think, as a kind of a final blow to not that I do not have any love for Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. I find Ben-Gvir extremely clownish. However, he is a clown that people voted for. And he has not broken the law. He has not broken United States law. I think he may have broken Israeli law in the past, and I think he got into a little bit of trouble with the police. But I mean, these are characters, okay? These are people who are members of Knesset. Smotrich is the finance minister. And actually, Smotrich, I've been relatively impressed with because he has started to withhold funds from the Palestinian Authority, saying that he cannot transfer money to them because they support terrorism, right? So it's the Israeli companies that employed Palestinians, they they did not want to transfer taxes that they collected. Sorry, not taxes they collected, taxes that they are paying, right, to the Palestinian Authority because of their workers. They didn't want to transfer them because they felt that they would get, basically, they would be exposed to the anti-terrorism laws in Israel. So they transferred them they transfer that money to the Israeli government, and the Israeli government therefore pays it to shield the employers in Israel from basically, funding terrorism, right? So it's a real it's absolutely crazy. And also that these sanctions, they're superficial in many ways because on the night of the very large Iranian attack about a month ago, the United States sanctioned a non-existent entity, the Hilltop Youth. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like me saying, I'm sanctioning the LGBT community. I mean, it's like, okay, well, who? Like, it doesn't. You can say I'm sanctioning the Hilltop Youth. All right, who are these people? Who? It's like if I say I'm sanctioning the Blue Shirt Brigade. Who are they? I mean, you couldn't put them on a sanction list. So I would be, I don't know, maybe we should take bets on whether or not they actually sanction Ben-Gvir and Smotrich.
That might be an interesting bet. Something I wanted to say earlier when it comes to the idea of illegal settlements. So as you said, there are sort of like when people say illegal settlements, that they might mean two different things. According to international law, whatever that means, all of the settlements are illegal. Like Israel should have no presence in Judea and Samaria. Basically, all the 500,000 people that are there should be gone. So when some people say illegal settlements, they might simply mean all of it. While when Israel says illegal settlements, I think as Alex you've mentioned, it's they do not have a permit, or they are going somewhere they shouldn't be.
And I also just want to make it perfectly clear here. It's not okay. Let's imagine you build your house on that's illegally built, and you're a Jew. You're gonna have to figure out how to continually keep yourself with the lights on, because you're not going to be able to get connected to the electricity. They won't connect you. You're also going to have to figure out your water. So it's a lot of it's this idea that it is a, I don't know, an easy thing necessarily to do. It's a very difficult thing to do. And it's also completely ridiculous. So you're not enforcing even Israeli law. Like if you're and also, why would you, that's very troubling to me. Why on earth would there be strategic building done by the PA in Area C when they have a ton of land on which to build houses? And most of these structures are actually empty, completely empty. And it's on strategic sites, so it's basically denoting a border. Why? Maybe so that Israel can't, come in and out at will. It's trying to create a reality on the ground. Maybe in anticipation of these types of circumstances. Also, no one's living in these houses. No one is living there. It's also pretty incredible, and they're illegally built. They're illegally built. There's been it's interesting. The organization that petitions the courts to demolish illegal structures is Regavim, which is also very likely to be getting sanctions. Which is, I mean, that's just on what basis? On what basis? What this is a think tank that they say they come out with some research that maybe you don't like. I mean, is that the standard we're using now to sanction individuals, to sanction people, to destroy their lives and their livelihood?
Anders, anything to add?
Well, yeah, as I think you said earlier, it's a hot mess, right? And part of me wish that the Israelis would basically just annex the whole thing and then, implement a system of property rights and individual rights that applies to everybody there. And then building these empty houses along the borders. And by the way, I encourage the viewers and listeners, look up a map of the West Bank where you can see these areas. I mean, when we're talking about it, it sounds like, there are three neat areas, A, B, C. But it's an incredible patchwork of corridors and areas and things like that. So these empty structures that Alex referenced to, could very well be in preparation for a quote unquote two-state solution, and once they have full control of that, and by the way, when you see that patchwork map, you realize that the two-state solution is completely impossible to effectuate, right? So if you ever thought that might be a valid option at some point in time, nope, it's not. Because these empty houses that may be sitting along these Area C corridors, they would be filled up with Iranian ammunitions and otherwise similar to what Hezbollah has done or did in southern Lebanon before Israel finally started to take them out. And you would just have a repeat on the West Bank because the Israeli settlements would be incredibly vulnerable to a lot of this, obviously. And I mean, we know that's the goal from the river to the sea. So no annexation. I actually just wrote an article about the United States of the Levant, where I'm thinking that Israel, you have to realize that you're in the wrong neighborhood to ever live peacefully until these people have given up on the idea that they can push you out of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I
Yeah, and
mean,
also,
go on,
sorry.
Alex.
No, I was also just gonna say, like, back in the day, back in my parents' time, I think about the city that I live in, right? Jerusalem. Sorry, this is the place where I work and spend all my time, right? Jerusalem. So this city is every kind of person lives in this city. I get on the light rail with all different kinds of people. 50% of the people who live in the city are Muslim, and I feel very safe everywhere I go. And that was, I'm told, the reality in the 1980s in places like Ramallah, where Jews could go. It was, and it was also because the presence, and now as well, because there's no kind of control by the Israelis. Now you just have complete anarchy, and now it's 25 years of UNRWA education, so that they can't even apparently look at a Jew without wanting to foam at the mouth and kill them. I mean, it's not, and the so and so it's hard, it's inconceivable to me that we could possibly be in this situation. And I think that it would be a very nice positive step in the right direction, because there's no reason why not. And I'm not saying that there's not going to be outbreaks of random outbreaks of violence, right? There might be, But the reality is that everybody is the amount of prosperity here in somewhere like Jerusalem, it's unbelievable. I mean, it really is unbelievable. You have Palestinians who are living in Israel whose average salary is 55 or 60,000 dollars a year. And then the average in the West Bank is something like 6 or 7 or something unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean,
And yeah,
it's so tragic because, both the West Bank and Gaza could have had the same standard of living if they would have just embraced the opportunity, right? And then going back to the
probably
80s, like you
Gaza
said, and
more.
I mean, Gaza was similar to the West Bank, right? People moved, I mean, work daily without a lot of controls before the intifadas happened, and yeah, it's tragic.
Yeah.
My real sorry, go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to mention, because you mentioned about, there might be some potential problems if Israel annexes all of the West Bank, but it's not like we are living in a peaceful situation now. There are terrorist attacks coming out of these places already, and yeah, it will definitely be a problem. The same way it was a problem after the War of Independence, the same way it was a problem after the 67 war. Yeah, once the same way it was a problem after World War II and how borders changed there. Yeah, once when you have a war between nations and when one side starts it and loses basically the right to exist, um, then yeah, it will be a mess a bit after. But you can't be in this state where the side who basically tried to wipe you out still manages to be in power. I mean, just imagine the Nazi party still being in charge after World War II and expecting, well, they've lost, so maybe they'll realize that they should be at peace with us. No, it takes actual effort to basically transform it into something that might resemble actual coexistence.
Yeah, and the thing that really scares me is that annexation, no annexation. The problem is now that the Americans have put a literal army in the middle of the West Bank. The PA's police force, who there's been a lot of reporting done on them and how many Jews they've actually killed. Many of them moonlight as terrorists. But now reports have been emerging about how they go to Pakistan, the PA, right, who are supposed to be a counter-terrorism force. America gives them their guns, of course. America gives them all of their various training and weapon. And there was a scandal, basically. Well, maybe it wasn't a scandal. It came out that the PA's police force has been training in Pakistan for years. And it was brought to light by a Jewish organization who found out about it on TikTok. And this was supposedly unknown to the IDF, although, they're not going to cop to the fact that they know about it, which is totally fair enough. So there's an action. Oh, why? And they were learning how to do things like parachuting. Why does a counter-terrorist force, a local police force, have to learn parachuting? Why do they have to learn about, different kinds of munitions? Why do they have to learn about tank shells? All of that. So there is so that, coupled together with the strategic building along the seam line, along the borderline, suggests to me that this is actually going very decisively in the direction of a terrorist army.
Yeah, and that is something Israel has to realize. I've just read a new Ynet post. Apparently, Netanyahu was in Gaza, basically saying, "Okay, Hamas will not control any part of Gaza. They will be completely wiped out." And that would be great to see. It would be great to see. Again, we've only heard it from people such as Smotrich, although he has said that basically Israel should prepare for the West Bank annexation. We've heard some things from American politicians too, so there might be a path there. But again, it has to be. It's not. It's not just a button you press and you suddenly are in a different state. It actually takes a lot of even deciding that you're going to do it will encounter a lot of pushback, and then actually going through with it will be will require a similar thing, because again, Israel was already controlling all of it. It was controlling all of these parts, and it didn't have basically the what do you even call it, the confidence or the political will to actually go through what it takes to actually take full control over these territories.
And some people might just say, oh, it's these kind of religious nutcases that are saying that Israel has to control Judea and Samaria. No, it's you would okay, so they need to control the mountains. These are mountains that are covering if you stand on the mountain on the Judean hills, you can see all the way over Ben Gurion Airport, all the way to Tel Aviv. And you need to be able to control the if you don't have the mountains, you cannot defend the territory. So from a strategic standpoint, they have to be able to control that. And you also need the low territory. You need the Jordan Valley. These are two for this is an existential needs to control the Jordan Valley, which is where all of the smuggling comes in. Think about it. You have going over from Jordan, you have then you have the Aravad Desert. You need to be able to control these two strategic points in order to secure Ben Gurion Airport. Without Judea and Samaria, Israel's actually, you can't live there, because you can't imagine if some idiot with an RPG is able to shut down Ben Gurion Airport 5 times a day. I mean, I mean, think about it. It really is. You can practically spit and you're at Ben Gurion Airport. With the naked eye, you can see planes taking over. And the so-called, West Bank is an enormous area. And the thing about also is that there's this lie that goes around that the Palestinians have not enough room, right, to live. And there's an incredible amount of room. It's like basically Area A is completely uninhabited as well. You have a few, you have a few, urban areas, but so you have and also the Palestinians lie about the number of citizens they have that are living there, because they count the citizens that they count. Okay, Israel counts the Arab residents of East Jerusalem as citizens, as in the census, right? And the Palestinians count the residents of East Jerusalem in their census. And they also have all of these other people who are living there, who are apparently 130, 140, 150 years old. So really, the Palestinians have amazingly discovered the secret to eternal life.
Yeah, there's almost 8 million people in Hong Kong. If they really had belief in property rights and willingness to actually build something, they'd be able to fit in really well.
Just a comment there. So it's a big area, the West Bank, in relation to Israel's size, right? So from that point of view, it's a threat. But in terms of square miles, I mean, this is tiny. Israel, I think, could easily control
Walkable.
it. Yes, the PA police force is a threat, obviously, but I mean, I don't know, is it a bigger threat than Hamas was in Gaza in terms of numbers and how well they
Yeah.
are equipped? I'm pretty sure Israel could take care of business there as well, if the will was there, and yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just quickly about this idea that Israel needs to take these parts because of national security issues, just in case someone will say, well, doesn't Russia say the same thing? You have to you have to really look at the history. Basically, Israel was willing to basically agree to the UN resolution, and which when you look at the national security wise of how the borders look then, it would have been terrible from the national security perspective. Yet it was willing to do so because it was basically, it wanted independence. It wanted to actually exist. And it's only because our Arab nations have tried again and again and again to basically destroy Israel that Israel, yeah, I think has every right to basically take these parts, because those nations have already given up on the idea that they have any legitimacy as a nations.
Well, also, like, it was, sorry, in places like East Jerusalem, there's no such thing as East Jerusalem, right? But there were Jews living there, who had been relieved of their property and relieved of their land by Jordan, who was an occupier. So Jordan had an occupation, a military occupation in the West Bank. They then attacked Israel, and Israel decided, Israel went and liberated and unified Jerusalem, as well as, took the land that wasn't the Jordanians. So you can't take land from. You can't take land in any kind of meaningful way from people who, from a country that didn't control it. I mean, or shouldn't have been controlling it. There was no legitimacy to Jordan controlling the West Bank. It was an occupation over there.
Just quickly, I think fundamentally the right of a country to own a certain parts of land, which I think is very misguided way to
Yeah.
look at it. Essentially, the nation's legitimacy comes from the perspective of to what extent do they recognize the individual rights of their citizens. And any country in the Middle East, besides Israel, it's less than desirable, to say the least. Israel is the only rights respecting country, at least on some fundamental underlying level, even if it's not fully perfect. So no country in Middle East besides Israel has any sort of this idea of right to exist. They once they start recognizing the individual rights of their citizens, we can start talking about it. But until then, I don't think you can make any such claims. Anders, anything to
add? No, Alex, you want to say something?
Yeah. I also just want to say, like, the whole thing about the executive order with anybody who is getting in the way of kind of the Biden's Middle East strategy. Well, that is an enormously pernicious way to go after groups of people and to go after civic society. I mean, there was one particular organization who was actually was an anti-gay organization. Now, I don't support them. I think that what they think is totally abhorrent. But and also it was run by a settler. But since when does America decide to intervene and to sanction a group that would be legal in America? I mean, as far as I know, maybe Anders, you can let me know. Are you allowed to be a jerk in America still, or are you going to get into a tremendous amount of trouble? No, you can. I mean, you can be a jerk, right? You can be a homophobic, piece of you know what, like this group were. But does that really mean you sanction them? Like you get the United States government to make sure they can never have a bank account?
Yeah, no, for the most part, I think it can still be a jerk over here,
Mm-hmm.
but it's getting harder and harder. So, I'm sure there are people out there who think I'm a jerk, but
Well, and also we did notice as well with so maybe in the last few minutes, sorry, Daniel, I know that you did want to talk about the other news
No, it's
story.
okay. I was thinking about bringing it up, but I think this conversation was much more interesting, and we can cover the other part some other time.
Yes. So I mean, it's extremely scary to see everything that's been going on in the last few months in regards to the sanctioning. Because now you have a sort of uh, what it has the effect of it will be, and I do believe that there's a very important, a very negative UN security resolution that's got to do with Judea and Samaria, that's coming down, it's coming out, is really to put Trump in a position whereby he can't come back from it. He won't be, the advisors that will be trying to help him, because I know that that's what Trump views that as kind of his legacy. He would like to be able to solve the Middle East, because he views it as like the deal of the deal. If you can get this deal done, you can get any deal done. Um, and and I and it's kind of pathetic, right? That's how much that's what politics really comes down to, is that you hear so much about something that you have to completely, just stick it to the next administration that's coming in. And also the American strategic concept vis-a-vis Israel through Oslo, and Oslo 1, 2, and 3, right? So Oslo was separated into two parts, 1, 2, and 3. Bibi actually continued with Oslo 3. It's been a complete strategic failure. I mean, I don't think you could look at it and say, "Oh, that's been a great success." It's not good. It's terrible. It's terrible. And the Palestinians have certainly not thrived. They're doing better than most of the Arab world. The Israelis have not done well out of it. We had an increase in terror. Year by year, it gets worse and worse. And if we don't control places like the Jordan Valley, if you're going to force that upon the Israelis, then you're going to have like a bloodbath. You're going to have a bloodbath, because if you can't control the Jordan Valley, where most of the smuggling comes in, it's going to cause the deaths of, I can't even think of how many. And also, the Americans have the Taylor Force Act. Taylor Force I think he was a former Marine, or former he was a former part of the I think it might have been it was some American Army unit, can't remember. And he was shot dead, or stabbed actually, by a Palestinian terrorist. And then the I think it was the Republicans suggested an act to make it illegal for the Americans to transfer money to the PA. And so it's like on every level, they recognize that these are terrorists. Um,
So we do have to wrap up. We have a few super chats. First, thank you, Larry, for your super chats. And thank you, Jonathan, for your super chat. He says, Alex, Daniel, and Anders, great panel. I do agree. Just before we part our ways, Anders, where can people find you?
Yeah, first, let me just say I wish that after almost 70 years here that the Israelis would get the confidence to really take charge. I realize that it's a small country. They're dependent on the US to some extent, even though it has gotten better over the last 20 some years, but because there is no other way that this will eventually be resolved without Israel taking charge of these territories. People can find me at andersingemarsson.substack.com.
Alex, where can people find you?
Yeah, so just kind of a final thoughts is that the I don't personally believe that the Palestinians want an end to this conflict in any way whatsoever. Of course, they don't actually want the Israelis to go, but they also don't want them to come to any kind of peace agreement. Even them being killed in entirety, I don't even think they want that. They want us to stay here, and because it's a great thing. It's a great thing if you're a dictatorship and to have a nice scapegoat for you and your failings. And it's always great as well because they get an enormous amount of money for their kind of special status, special human status. Yeah, so just kind of where do I think people should go for more information? I would say Regavim. Hopefully, they'll still be online. If you want to actually see a report about all of the illegal building on the seam line, I also recommend the Alma Center, which is explaining the strategic problem in the north of the country. I also recommend Kohelet, which is discussing all things to do with individual rights as well as capitalism in Israel. Again, also in the eye of sanctions. So I hope they make it out. And that's it, I suppose.
And you can find me on my YouTube channel. Then links to all of us are going to be in the description. We also have the Atlas Shrugged book club starting about 3 minutes ago, but it will start in just about a minute or so. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you in the Atlas Shrugged book club and also tomorrow on the Daily Objective and the reality show. Bye-bye.